Welcome to Urbane Legends, the podcast about urban legends and how to act in a courteous and refined manner, but much less about that. Here's your hosts, Neil and Chris.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Urbane Legends, the podcast about urban legends and increasingly being sidled out the back door etiquette. I am the author of In Pursuit of Cheese, My Journey Around Dordogne, Chris Flynn, and with me, as always, is waspish socialite
Neil Herbert.
Hi Neil, how's your week been?
It's been been pretty good.
Seen your picture in the Daily Mail attending certain socialite events this week. How were they?
It was good. I looked down my nose at some inferior people.
Is that anyone?
Things I didn't need.
Yeah.
Complained about how hard I have to work and have to work twice as hard as poor people.
You've got a new range of scarves that have been picked up by H&M, haven't you? They're coming out soon.
Yes, yeah. Other people make them obviously, but I very much, come up with the idea,
the design
of the scarf.
Yeah. What kind of designs are they?
Somebody else made them.
Oh, someone else did design. So you've
I put the money in, which I think is,
Did you put the money in though?
Real work. Well, no, I borrowed it. Obviously, I bought the company out and then leveraged the debt. And
okay, well,
I suspect it'll go under in about 3 years, but I should probably make a tidy packet out of it. So
you could sell it to Sir Philip Green before that happens.
Just rinse it out of the pension scheme, I guess.
Allegedly,
control.
Well, that's good. I'm sure we all wish you well. And were you particularly waspish at all in the last week?
Well, other than all of the above.
Did you make anyone cry or throw maybe some Riesling in someone's face?
Well, I thought I saw one of the servants looking at me, so I screamed at them until they ran out of the room crying. Yeah.
Yeah. Then presumably they're sacked.
Eye contact.
They're sacked because of that as well, presumably.
Yeah, obviously.
Good. Glad to hear it. So you obviously will be very much into etiquette and that kind of stuff. Not you doing it, but you want etiquette. You want to be a receiver of etiquette
around me. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, so this week, because we've completely covered all etiquette from the Western world, I'm going to give you some Japanese etiquette, because I know that you like to travel to Japan now and then, don't you?
When it's Lotus Blossom season or whatever they call it. Cherry Blossom, is it, in fact?
Yeah, Cherry Blossom. So, passing money when paying. So, if you need to pay in cash, in cities such as Tokyo, most taxis accept credit cards nowadays, but in smaller towns in the Japanese countryside, many taxis only accept cash. In Japan, money is rarely passed directly from hand to hand. This means that when you purchase an item or service, you won't hand money directly to the cashier. Instead, you'll place your payments, whether cash or credit, on a small tray provided, like a panhandler. If change is due, your change will be placed here for you as well. The practice is prevalent in Japan. You can expect to encounter this more common system in hotels, restaurants, taxis, and konbini, or bainai, which is convenience stores, and elsewhere. So don't hand someone the money. Put your cash in the tray, Neil.
I think paying for things is irredeemably vulgar, so I don't do that. That sounds a bit like I went to some
They do that quite a lot, just abroad. If you go to I mean, just anywhere. If you go to a tobacconist in France or Spain or whatever, they'll often just put the money in a little change thing.
Reek fancy bar or something. Give you change back in a saucer.
Yeah.
So you can leave it.
That's useful to know. Don't hand people money. Because, I would instinctively probably do that if I was in a convenience store getting myself some, I don't know, Mountain Dew or something. I'd hand the cash over because they've got...
You mean buying a pillow wife?
Buying yet another pillow wife. Buying...
Keep the others company,
in my pillow harem. Or buying perhaps some new outfits for my virtual Tamagotchi girlfriend. So eating and drinking on the street, Neil, we love doing it in England, don't we? Constantly, because we're on the move, busy people. Yeah. Bang.
Fuel.
Yeah, business fuel. Got to get some business fuel down yourself. Steak bake, something like that.
Bit down the shirt, never want to move on.
Bit down the shirt. Get rid of the shirt. I've got another shirt in my drawer at work.
What ties for? Mop that up. Mop up that gravy. Lick it.
Throw the tie away. Get another tie.
Lick another deal. Yeah.
You've got drawers full of ties for the next meeting. Got a different tie for every meeting time. So eating and drinking in the street. So street food is not as common in Japan as it is in some other countries in Asia. Although cities like Osaka and Fukuoka are notable exceptions with live street food cultures. It's a minefield. Different cities, different...
I've got to read them on a city-to-city basis.
Ugh. In most Japanese cities, eating and drinking in the street or on local trains, such as Tokyo Metro, for example, is generally frowned upon. Even so...
Well, that's the same in a lot of places.
Well, you're not meant to, eat your...
Metro, like a tube train, that's bad manners anywhere, really, isn't
it? Well, eating on the train is...
Train in England's fine. In France, though, that's frowned upon, for example.
Well, unless you buy it from the buffet car.
Oh, yeah, no, if it's like a buffet car, that's a different kettle.
Yeah, but you don't go on there with your bucket of chicken.
Yeah.
As much as you don't go on with a carrier bag.
Hot food's the problem, isn't it? Actually, it's kind of like
a carrier bag full of rotisserie chickens from a rotisserie.
Closed environments. Yeah, you don't want that.
I was thinking of would there be a market for? Because in France, there's the shops which literally just sell rotisserie chickens, right? And they're delicious, aren't they? Rotisserie chicken. It's absolutely amazing. I was wondering if there'd be a market to open something like that in Brighton, just a shop that just sells rotisserie chicken. And you open it, sell the chickens, and then shut the shop. You've made enough money to get more chickens to put on the rotisserie for the next day.
There's a restaurant. I was reading a review in The Guardian. I think it was. It's a restaurant that's just opened up. Was it in France or was it in England? I can't remember. But yeah, they would basically that's pretty much their menu is rotisserie chickens. They're supposed to be really nice.
Delicious. I looked, you can get a rotisserie for your own kitchen for not very much money, and you can use it for doing your rotisserie chickens. You could make your own kebabs.
Yeah.
Both.
I've looked into this, believe you.
Yeah.
You can get a funny attachment that makes you weird chips.
Oh, really?
It just sort of spins them around on the rotisserie spit. Oh, it's like a cage.
Oh, yeah.
So they kind of tumble around like a tumble dryer or something. So it's air dried kind of.
I was thinking of getting one, but the only reason why I haven't is because of I think the size of it would be too big for my kitchen to store it comfortably. Because otherwise, I'd just bang in a chicken every Sunday and just have that.
Yeah, it's one of those ones that's the old the fabled toasted sandwich maker.
Well, I've got one and I use it all the time.
Yeah. I just use just a frying pan, mate, to be honest with you.
Yeah, you can do that. You can just
cook it in that, which is fine. It's just I've got a slow cooker which I've had at the sink, which I use occasionally, but just not enough to warrant it. A bread maker in the wardrobe somewhere, which I
haven't got a bread maker. I've just got a tin which I make bread in. If I make bread, I've got the slow cooker, and I get some use out of it. But to be honest, it was cheap, so it doesn't really matter.
Oh yeah, no, don't get me wrong. It was I'm good enough to have it. It's you can put a big old meal in it, just don't use it often enough to justify it. So it's one of those ones you don't want to keep buying those bits of equipment, and then you just end up somewhere.
Yeah, but rotisserie chicken once a week. Whoa.
Good.
Which brings us back to Japan. Even so, these days it's not terribly uncommon to see the locals scarfing down. Should be scoffing, shouldn't it? A quick snack.
No, scarfing.
Scarfing down. I've never heard of that. Scarfing down a quick snack en route to or from work. However, while this traditional rule of etiquette may be increasingly old-fashioned, it's still a good one to keep in mind. As for eating on trains, while it would be slightly uncouth to eat or drink on a commuter train, the bullet train and other long-distance trains are a different story. Not only is it culturally acceptable to eat and drink on long-distance trains, it's an integral part of the experience. And Japanese train stations are brimming with beautiful bentos and sake for the journey, so you can get all nice and pissed up. And some rice wine, cause some trouble.
The salary man just necking some sake.
Before he gets home at 1 a.m. and then has to get up at 4 a.m. to go to work. Yeah, I hate the idea of being a salary man, don't you? That seems like a hell of a horrible life.
Yeah, I think it just feels like a really pressurised environment. But I mean, fair play to them for their commitment to excellence and all that. But I don't know. It's quite say, but no, I don't know. Not for
not for old Nearly. Not for Mr. Herbert. No, thank you. But you work hard enough, don't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well done. Well done. You're the true hero. So Neil, there's your couple of Japanese etiquettes. I'll probably do another couple of them next week because don't know, because I found it now. Neil, you are leading the charge today on. So I don't know how else to put it. Crack on.
Yeah, okay. Probably going to be a charge of the Light Brigade, but we'll see how we go. So, Chris, I'm going to talk to you this week about Kuldhara. This is a haunted village.
Kuldhara?
India's very... Kuldhara.
Kuldhara. Okay. I'll just clarifying what it's called, sorry.
Yes, Kuldhara. So, this is India's very own ghost town, as I'm being called here by conspiracytheories.im. An article by Garima Gupta.
Okay.
So, Kuldhara, dotted with hundreds of dilapidated sandstone houses and dusty roads, lies 18 kilometres southwest of Jalzama, Rajasthan. Standing cursed and haunted, it obtained an air of abandonment by holding a secret that needs to be discovered.
What?
Yeah, you up for discovering a secret, Chris?
Well, I don't know. It sounds like it could be a dark secret.
It could be. We don't know until we find out. So its origin in around the 13th century. It was inhabited by a prosperous clan of Paliwal Brahmins who were known for their business acumen and agricultural knowledge. So I think Brahmins were it's like a caste, isn't it, within the Hindu system? It's sort of like the priests and things, we believe.
Yeah. They're a Varna class in Hinduism, and they're intellectuals, priests and teachers and that kind of jazz.
Right. So Kuldhara was the largest village in the community of 84 villages settled nearby, home to over 1,500 people housed in 400 houses, living for centuries. But one night, everyone left the town in the dark.
Ooh.
Why did they do so, Chris? Why did they decide to leave their settlements after having lived there for centuries? I'm assuming people overall, just not like individual people, like live hundreds of years.
No, I think it's...
What? You think, or is that another mystery of this town? Just the people live for like centuries.
Yeah, and suddenly fuck off.
It's all the yoga and stuff, isn't it? Just keeps you really healthy.
Well, Rajasthan is that's right in the north of India, isn't it? So it would have been.
So yeah,
it's kind of. I think it borders onto what is now Pakistan, so it would have been sort of a big sort of crossroads, trading crossroads. So you can see why. A lot of kind of towns like this, ancient towns, there's a lot of ancient towns around there because they were big sort of trade hubs.
Okay. Yeah, very beautiful, I've heard, Rajasthan. Okay, so the most startling question is, where did they go after all? That's more or less just kind of... So there's a few theories that he outlines here, Chris.
Okay.
So the first one is around a tax collector called Salim Singh.
Right. So
one legend associated with Salim Singh, who was the Diwan of Jalzama, He was well known for his debauchery and unscrupulous tax collecting methods. Carry on.
Yeah, that's living all right. He sounds all right, doesn't he?
I think, depending on exactly where that's going to go, to be honest with you, I think it can go one of two ways. It's kind of like a little bit saucy, a little bit randy, fair enough. If it's like, yeah. Anyway, look, you'll find out in a second. So, according to the tales narrated popularly, he had his eyes on the beautiful daughter of the chief of the village. He was hell-bent on having the girl and warned the villagers to mount heavy atrocities. I think he means to expect heavy atrocities if they came his way.
What?
And he gave them a deadline of just 24 hours. So, he's putting them on the spot.
What they did, he said to the villagers that they should, right. So, sorry, just clarify. So he fancied the chief's daughter.
Yeah. So he's got his eye on the beautiful daughter.
And then he said to expect atrocities if you come my way. So what's that? That's going if you start on me.
Okay. So, as actually written, and again, this is one we have to bear in mind, this is probably written in somebody's second language, so we don't want to be too snotty about it. But what is actually written here is he was hell-bent on having the girl and warned the villagers to mount heavy atrocities if they came his way. Now, obviously, he's not warned the villagers to mount heavy atrocities, because why would they do that? So I think
quickly amount them.
Yeah. Well, all right.
So he's saying, if I don't have the girl, I'm going to smash the place up.
If I don't get it, I'm gonna invade with a load of people and sort of like make your lives hell, or I don't know.
Well, he seems quite powerful for like just a tax collector.
Well, you probably would have been back in the day, because I don't think people would have been too interested in paying tax. It was a bit like, I believe, in the Roman Empire, the tax collectors had an awful lot of power because effectively you were licensed by the state.
Yeah.
You basically had to get hold of the money by hook or by crook, and you had pretty much, barring anything completely outrageous, how you got hold of that money was up to you, because they needed it for the treasury. So you kind of had a little bit of license as to how you got hold of it, because
Yeah, so probably had mercenaries and that kind of stuff to help.
Yeah, exactly.
Gang of thugs.
Exactly. You would have got in, tooled up with some people at his back, I would have imagined. But yeah, and it would have been quite a well remunerated role in those days, I guess, because it would have been quite important being able to sort of collect the old tax for the coffers.
Yeah, and quite dangerous. And so if you were an efficient, an efficient tax collector, then you would be, you'd probably get a cut, I would imagine, a percentage.
Almost certainly to incentivise them to.
Or you say that. I mean, you would imagine that. I mean, it sounds like there's a fair amount of wiggle room for a little bit of corruption as well. You go, I mean, there's about 1,000 people in the village, and actually there's 1,500, and you just keep the rest, or whatever. I mean, I doubt that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, it was a very advanced place, India, so maybe they had census takers and stuff as well to try and keep everything nice and ship-shape.
There was some of that. Yeah, I mean, almost certainly, I don't know. I mean, how thorough and how frequent the audits would have been, who knows? But as with all of these things, there's bound to be a bit of avenue for a bit of grift. And again, as with all of these things, I'm sure people were happy to turn a blind eye as long as money came rolling in.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's rocked up. He's wanting the chief's daughter. Give him a deadline of 24 hours. Not willing to surrender the girl to this devil for the sake of their pride and honour. Decided to leave the town overnight, leaving their belongings behind. Not only that, Chris, because there's a lot in this actually which talks about, and I don't know how anyone's been able to verify this, but supposedly the village was abandoned literally overnight. Right. Again, how anyone's verifying this, I don't know. I've not been able to sort of ascertain that properly. But it's a bit like, you marry Celeste, but much bigger. Yeah. And, and it's sort of a bit more real. So also, though, before they left, that's not all. It wasn't just an abandoned village, Chris, because it's not just a ghost town. You've seen those. Also, before they left the village, they cast a curse that no one would ever inhabit the village again. And the spell stays true. Well, it says until today. I think he means to this day. And the village remains.
Should we go and move there just to prove them wrong?
Well, it's
probably like a UNESCO World Heritage Site, so you legally can't live there.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, that if that's how the curse manifests itself,
through bureaucracy.
Bureaucracy, yeah. Well, it's the
most deadly of all curses.
Yeah, I think, it's I've read in other places there's this kind of thing about how, if you stay overnight you will be killed and things like that, and supposedly the government put up warning signs on the gates to tell people not to stay there overnight, because I guess it's kind of a little bit out in the middle of nowhere, so they can't really rigidly enforce it. It reminds me a little bit when I went to Serbia. There's this great notice and it's like, don't go past this bit of the castle or you'll probably fall over and die. So if you want to, that's fine. I'm not really going to bother our asses about it, but just recommendation. Which I thought was quite good. There's no railing.
Oh, okay. So it was actually like you'll die because it's dangerous rather than it's haunted.
Oh yeah, no. This particular.
So
thing,
I'm looking at a thing called Culture Trip, a website, and it says the same story, but there's a couple of differences. So it says that Salam Singh was the Prime Minister of Jaisalmer, who fell in love with the daughter of the village chief. So not a tax collector, he was actually the Prime Minister. And he threatened the villagers and her family by burdening them with huge tax if they did not agree to the demand of the daughter marrying him. So they left because he was going to tax the shit out of them, basically, to protect the girl's honour.
Okay, so that's one potential, and that one seems to go around quite a few places. Obviously, the details do differ from place to place.
Yeah. Unless the guy who wrote your one is like one of those American people who doesn't believe there should be a government. So instead of calling him Prime Minister, he just called him tax collector.
Yeah, I want to make a government small enough to drown a bath. I'm really into war, though, for some reason. I seem to think that doesn't happen without government. Actually, no, they probably just get Blackmore to do all the wars for them. Anyway, let's not get into that. I don't think it's the most rigorous. Start again. I don't know that it's the most rigorously researched article looking at it, but hey, it's interesting. So apparently, as well, historians have found no clear evidence of where the Brahmins settled after leaving the ancestral village. So it's interesting.
Atlantis.
So that's one theory. They all went to Atlantis.
Join
the Atlantans. They went off to a ley line. We're not paying you tax anymore, fucker. You're not having my daughter, so we'll go with the lizard people in Atlantis. So that's one theory.
A powerful person threatened to either smash him up or give him really high taxes because he wanted to marry the daughter of the village chief.
It's like those silly kind of like rumours about, what do they call it, Droit de Seigneur, or the sort of like the first night. There's this thing that there's a persistent rumour that people, the lord of the manor or whatever, and in European countries could demand the first night with the wife of a newly married lady.
Yeah, he could deflower her, essentially. It's not true. Oh, well, that's good.
Okay, so number one, rapacious tax collector. Number two, could it have been an earthquake? So in contrast to the above-mentioned legend, in recent research, signs of tectonic movements have been found along with several other major faults in the region. Yeah. Moreover,
because it's kind of the foothills, or it's near, well, I say near, probably not that near, but I mean, it's close-ish to the Himalayas and all of the sort of mountainous region, which kind of sits between Pakistan, Afghanistan, and India, and all that, isn't it? So it's probably quite geoactive.
Yeah, so according to the researchers, the dilapidated structures were located on the geological faults. And there's collapsed walls, scattered dressed stones, fallen lintels, pillars and stuff that actually show some evidence for the study for them. But, as our article points out, if the place faced a sudden earthquake, why did it remain desolate? Could have been renovated for re-inhibition.
I mean, they could have...
Most probably because of the stories of mysterious deaths and rumours that the village was haunted. No one ever dared to come in and settle there. So that's the second theory. It could have been earthquakes, but doesn't explain why it's never been resettled.
Well, unless they thought they'd angered the gods or something, or it was like a shit place to be. Or unlike the people of San Francisco or whatever, they thought, right, this isn't a very safe place to build a village, so we'll go somewhere which is... has a few less earthquakes.
Yeah. So and then there's our third one. So interestingly, talking about the west coast of America, was it scarcity of water? So while another theory suggests dwindling water supply may have forced the villagers to seek new sources of water elsewhere, they had an advanced understanding of agriculture and were able to grow crops in harsh, dry conditions of the Thar, identifying water presence beneath the soil. Thus, the scarcity of water may have led to the starving population. Still, the question does remain unanswered. If it was water scarcity, then why do people vanish overnight, and why not in the daytime? I mean, it's much about the daytime, but again, why do they go off so quickly? And then a final theory: could there have been an invasion? So, a final speculation by historians supports the possibility of an invasion.
Yeah.
According to this viewpoint, invaders on the festive day of Raksha Bandhan might have poisoned the communal wells with animal carcasses. Several villagers martyred, protecting their own village from invaders, and had to migrate to new and safe places overnight. Although, interestingly, the Paliwal community does not celebrate Raksha Bandhan, so that would seem to invalidate that theory.
Of the date of it, anyway.
Not quite sure. Yeah, not quite sure what the evidence for that is either. Really, how you'd sort of still be able to. So wells would have all dried up by now, I would have thought, so you wouldn't see evidence of animal carcasses. So, what could be the truth? It's a desolate place with a frightening look, and it's now a heritage site maintained by the Archaeological Survey of India. The amazing fact about the place is the gates of Kuldhara are closed by neighbouring villagers as they believe that supernatural beings take over as the sun sets. The temple there continues to stand amidst the ruins. However, sadness still lies in the air, thinking of the forefathers who had to abandon it overnight. The truth still remains below the layers of soil, and the legend of Salem Singh continues to attract the interest of most of the people. Moreover, the legend is supported by ghost activity. Notice there are references to the sounds of screaming and other bizarre activities. It does not get into what those bizarre activities might be.
Yeah, it's a shame, isn't it? Because I always put that as a capper on stuff like this, but they never actually tell you what it is.
Well, again, this is one of my favourite categories of urban myth. I'm beginning to lean. So it's a heritage site. Apparently, gets quite good tourist trade. And Rajasthan's quite good.
There's loads of
starting to lead one of my favourite categories, the cheeky grift.
I mean, that part of India, there's loads of some of the very earliest cities in the world that you can find, and there was like really early civilizations called like the Indus-Vati civilization and that kind of stuff. And there's quite a few sort of abandoned cities because it's very arid there. They kind of stick around. And it can be because of like a fall of the culture or, a change in the climate conditions and that kind of stuff.
Well, I think there's something inherently fascinating about abandoned villages, full stop. Because use one of those wiki wormholes you fall down, reading about ghost towns, and I kind of thought that was more of a kind of
Wild West.
Kind of more of an American thing where things get abandoned and then sort of like just
like Detroit.
There's a few in England. Well, yeah, coming that way, bankrupt city and all that. But you'll get it out in various places like because there's so much sort of obviously room and stuff out in the States. But then there's quite a few knocking around in England as well, or in the UK. I mean, there's one. Well, it's not a ghost town really, but there's that village that got flooded in Wales to make a reservoir for.
Well, there's the Tide Mills, which is just by New Haven, which is near us, and that used to be a little village with mills in it, which were run by the tide, unsurprisingly. And you can see all the kind of cottages and stuff there, but they've all been abandoned, so you can just kind of see the low wall bit. And they used to be, I mean, that was fairly recent. I think they were, because it was considered almost a slum, so people were moved out of there during the war, I think, and then it's just been abandoned since, because there used to be a railway station there as well.
Okay. So, they would have, probably would have been less, the beaching report, whatever, they stopping.
Well, no, the railway station, I mean,
off a lot of the branches of the train
that wouldn't have mattered so much because that line goes along to Seaford where it ends. So you've got, it's just there was a less stop rather than the whole line being gone.
Yeah.
But there's loads in Turkey and places like that, ancient places, villages and stuff that have been abandoned. It's not a new world thing, really.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the photos and it looks kind of like really fascinating. Obviously, as you say, looking like quite an arid climate. It's sort of obviously been very well preserved and sort of, millennia old. So it looks quite a fascinating place to visit. I mean, you think that people would go out there and sort of look at it regardless, but I guess there's probably, a fair few ancient sites in India. So if you want to,
a couple.
Want to add a little bit of extra sauce to your tourism brochures, a cheeky haunting is probably not a bad thing to push. Not suggesting that's where the original.
No, but it's decent to push that side of it, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Haunted village. So I want to know what other stuff there is. And when was it? When did all this happen? And how old is the place?
Yeah, it didn't really get into. The place has been around since the 13th century.
Oh, it was abandoned 200 years ago, apparently.
Oh, it was around the 19th century, apparently. So it would have been sometime in the 1800s it was abandoned. Let's have a look and see when Saddam Singh was knocking about. I mean, in the 19th century, it should be fairly good records of.
So it looks like they've actually reconstructed some of the houses for the tourists to see what it would have been like. Is that not dangerous? Ghosts might not like that. I mean, I think that...
Well, it seems that the ghosts only come out at night, as long as you're not living there. It's a bit like one of those holiday homes that you can't stay in all year round. You can go there for the day and you won't get a terrible haunting, right. But you stay overnight and, you piss off some of the...
but okay, so it says here, without the special permission of the caretakers of the village, no one can stay there at night. So you can get special... Well, we should try and do that, get ourselves some special permission.
Yeah, I was going to think, this sounds like another potential field visit, probably one of the more interesting ones. Or as much as I want to go to Chanak Case and hunt down the pig man, I think Rajasthan would be more interesting, albeit more expensive.
Slightly more expensive. Slightly more ambitious, yeah. I'd say.
Yes.
I mean...
So, we've got the Florida Museum of Robert the Dole, which, that's another field visit we'll do. And, but yeah, Chanak Chase is probably the cheapest one. But yeah, Rajasthan sounds most attractive thus far.
There's a... is it? Let's have a look.
I mean, clearly, it's fair and it was abandoned. I guess it's whether you buy into the, is it haunted? And what's it haunted by would be kind of my question as well. Because if everyone abandoned it, so let's assume it was, whether
so this doesn't make any sense, does it? Because, it's not like they were massacred there. Everyone left, so...
I suppose can you just curse?
Well, they cursed it, didn't they?
My demonology.
They cursed it, so it's spirits, but it's not the dead spirits of the people who live there. It's just sort of...
Not haunting, it's a curse.
Freelance spirits.
Calming or something.
Yeah. Just freelancers.
Well, I was reading about that earlier, and the earliest sign of the fact that they were getting a good fucking curse in was the fact that a cobra bit the Howard, what's-his-face's parrot.
Right.
How Carter, the guy who actually funded the expedition?
Yeah. So there's looks to be an Indian horror film about it. So that's worth knowing.
Nice.
Called Kaalo, Kaalo, and basically there was a witch who lived there, and she was killed and buried by angry villagers for sacrificing young female girl children to satisfy her grief for immortality.
I never
learned. Just let them have the kids. And then, so she came back, and then all the villagers left. And then I think some people, kind of like a Blair Witch thing. I think some people come there now, and then the witch is obviously still kicking about.
Yes, according to Wikipedia, it's the government of Rajasthan has been developing it as a tourist spot, and it just over the last 20 years or so, actually, in 2010s. So that's interesting. And you see on there's a thing on Wiki, it's actually got it in English as well. Kuldhara Heritage Resort, Theme Village Hotel.
So
you've got to be staying there overnight, then surely.
Yeah, Kuldhara Village Experience. I'm finding here on TripAdvisor, rating 4. The haunted experience. It gives you a kind of creepy feeling. The folklore says the entire village was vacated by the Pilawal villagers due to the exploits of women by the head Saddam Singh. His Haveli or house is still in the city and an attraction, though visitors are not allowed in as family still lives there. Lots of conservation work going on at the moment. Slightly contradictory.
I mean, again, this does seem very much one of those things where we've been very kind of, selective with the facts that we're going to choose to believe. So just looking here about the decline of the village. So firstly, like by 1815, most of the wells in the village had dried up. And by 1850, only the step well and 2 deep wells were functional. And apparently they would still have been getting taxed quite heavily. So originally they would have had quite good water supplies. So they would have had good agriculture. So that they were still paying taxes apparently based on the kind of old, there wasn't a reduction in tax demands from the state. So that might have forced them to start just getting the hell out of Dodge. And then you actually look at, rather than overnight, it looks like a rather more gradual exodus. So 1,588 during the sort of 17th, 18th century, around 800 by 1815, and around 37 in 1890. So not quite 24 hours. However, a variation of the legend claims the village was abandoned overnight. So no, the censuses seem to indicate
it was a village where they ran out of water, and there was a slow decline in population as people moved off to pastures new to try and eke out a living. Yeah,
well, they could eke out a living because it was a combination of not having enough water and then still being heavily taxed.
What was
assuming that they would still be able.
What was this? And then the story behind the essentially ghost town on the island of Simi, which we've seen. Do you remember at the top of the hill? Wasn't it just that the village just?
I don't remember anything about a ghost town. I do remember there were a lot of kids.
No, do you remember when you went up the top in Simi?
Yeah, or whatever it's called.
It was basically there was just like loads of almost dry stone wall houses, and it was all just abandoned.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no. I mean, well, this is down the bottom up to the top. That
it was just people moved away, or whatever. Or
I think
it was family arguments.
Well, basically, because basically, people, their kids, they couldn't decide on how to sort of partly paying the tax on it, and partly sort of like deciding who actually gets the money. They would apparently a lot of them basically the parents kind of like passed away, and then the kids couldn't agree on how they were going to actually split up the cost of the house and all the rest of it. So they ended up becoming decayed. They were kind of.
I know that was the case with.
Well, that's what we were told.
I thought that was the case with the. I know that was the case with like the fishermen's mansions, because there were all those amazing, massive mansion buildings which were kind of on the side of the harbour and going up, and they were all amazing. And I knew that was the case with them. But then at the top, there was the old village, and that was just basically completely abandoned, pretty much.
Oh, okay. I remember that one. No, I remember there was a lot of accidents at the top because people were riding, like young kids were riding their motorcycles too fast down the village because they were bored. But no, I don't recall. I think again though, Simi is just ultimately just a complete tourist place. So if you're running a restaurant or you've retired, it's a nice place to live. But you're close to roads, I guess. But other than that, there's not a lot going on, really, as we discovered. Spending many days waiting for the next ferry out. Lovely, lovely part of the world, but there's not really much to do in Sydney. If you enjoy the sunshine and the views.
If you're me, get yourself, eat a gyros and then get food poisoning for days.
Yeah, that year I said looked particularly icky.
Yeah, well, it ejaculated, didn't it? Which should have been the warning.
There was some kind of sauce in the middle, yeah, which I don't think is. I don't know if that's particularly traditional. I presume it was cheese or something, but it was something salty and molten that you were having a lot of time with.
Yeah, but at the top, there was it was abandoned. But a lot of the time with these abandoned places, because you see a lot of it in the Mediterranean, it's down to people, which is why
Greece is notorious for sort of like half-abandoned buildings where they can't.
Well, in Greece, if you don't put a roof on the building, you don't pay tax on it. So they build.
You don't have to build
like a 1 or 2 story house, and then they put the pillars in to build the 3rd floor, and then just never do it, just because they don't have to pay the property tax. And for some reason, they were in quite bad financial trouble. No one paying tax. But yeah, a lot of the time in the Mediterranean, because of how their laws of inheritance and stuff work, I guess, people just families just argue about stuff, and then it just goes on for generations, and just the buildings fall into ruins, which is a shame, isn't it?
So there's this movie called
No.
Agent Vinod. Oh, this is another one. They've shot some scenes in a movie called Agent Vinod, which it's a 2012 Indian action spy film.
Bollywood James Bond.
Sort of, Indian James Bond. Yeah, very much got heavy Bond vibes from this poster. Yeah, looking at this, so film's crew raised new structures for the set. They painted the ruined walls with insignia and Urdu words for their shooting requirements and covered some of the walls with cow dung to get the rustic look. Many tourists accused them of defacing heritage property. Subsequently, the Rajasthan government stalled the shooting. They cleaned all the cow dung off, so it's fine now. Yeah, it's now become... So in 2015, the government decided to actively develop the village as a tourist spot. It's being undertaken as a public-private partnership with Jindal Steelworks. The plan includes establishment of visitor facilities such as a cafe, a lounge, a folk dance performance area, night stay cottages and shops.
So what it kind of sounds like to me is that it is an old village that's been abandoned for very reasonable reasons, and it's now they're just lying about it being haunted and stuff to make it kind of like a Indian Disney World.
It's not even really particularly a grift, actually, because they only just started trying to make it more touristy recently. Yeah, I think it's another one of those classic. There are a few, as you say, it's been abandoned, and then they've just massively embellished and made up a load of stuff. Oh, it wasn't over 100 years. It was overnight. It's because of this evil tax collector, and then throwing a load of stuff about and trying to kidnap the chief's daughter and all the rest of it. And
yeah.
Yeah, it all feels a little bit more prosaic than that. Effectively, it was, it's just a place that could no longer sustain itself, and people gradually left. Looks like a nice place to visit, though.
Yeah, but again, as you said, I mean, India is chock-a-block full of really amazing history and architecture and stuff. So I don't know if it. I don't know if it'd be the first stop on my tour of India.
I would like to go to Rajasthan, but yeah, I wouldn't be necessarily overly bothered about necessarily going to Kuldhara. Who knows? If it was en route, I'd probably stop in the cafe.
Have yourself a...
I would like to, although I am quite tempted to go and stay overnight just to disprove.
Do you feel that it needs disproving?
Well, not really, no.
Well, you're quite spooking me at the moment, because you're basically sitting in almost pitch black. I can just sort of see the front bits of your face.
It's this camera. It's sort of yeah. I look like Holly from Red Dwarf, or a more awful version.
You just look quite scary.
My face poking out the screen. Yeah, no, it's not actually quite that dark in here, but yeah, I need to put on the light in a minute. It's not actually pitch black, but this camera doesn't handle low light very well.
And the fact that you've got a skull painted on your face as well. Oh, there you go.
That's helping, isn't it?
You look like the Owl Man. Oh no, he's caught up with me.
Yeah.
Okay, so I think that we have wrung that one dry as well. Another one that didn't really go terribly anywhere. So let's go through the. Let's go through the system, the matrix. This time,
how are you scoring this week, Chris?
This week, I'm going to be using my 120-sided dice, which I use for my tabletop role-playing games. And
yes, you're really advanced, D&D.
Really advanced. For my Citadel miniatures and Warhammer.
Finish painting them yet?
Oh yeah, that's what.
Chaos Wizard.
Yep, my Banshee Dreadnought.
Did you get that Ickle paint?
I did. I've recently got a new squadron. It's quite cheap. It only cost me £70 for the 6 figurines of frost goblins. So they should prove a hit next time I'm down at the Games Workshop. So I'll be using that dice, and I will be adding either, if it lands on a single number, I'll use a single number. Fine. If it lands on double-digit number, then I'll add the 2 numbers together. It's a simple system, and with that I will be channeling both the god of chance and the collective power of all tabletop miniature role-playing game people from around the Brighton and Hove area.
What if it lands on the Void of Chaos?
Well, then we know we're onto something, and we have to look deeper.
Okay, you're not playing Asimos rules then.
Okay, so spookiness. I will go first. So I guess even the story, which they've sort of made up or may have been like a little local myth or whatever, isn't spooky. It's about like someone, like an inappropriate man after someone's daughter, and then and trying to tax them loads, and they just go, let's fuck off. But we'll put a curse on it. I don't find curses particularly spooky. Okay, just going to say that.
No, there's not a lot of follow-up as to what this curse might have done.
I don't find curse isn't spooky to me. It's not. It's something, it's worrying, but it's not spooky. There's meant to be spirits and screams coming out of the village. I don't know where that's come from because we're not hearing a lot about it. I don't know. I don't know if it'd be scary at night. I think it might be quite nice and atmospheric. I think it might be quite a nice place to go. So spookiness, I'm afraid it's low for me. I'm giving it a 2 for spookiness. And remember, I've given some high scores for spookiness for nothing. So this is a real thumbing my nose. Neil, spookiness.
Yeah, I think I tend to sort of agree. I kind of, abandoned town isn't necessarily. It's more interesting than kind of spooky in a way, and as you say, the curse I don't sort of necessarily buy into. So, and there's not enough. There's a lot of talk about how the abandonment might have happened, but not a lot of talk about what supposedly happens if you disobey the curse. Or
no one's been foolish enough yet. Apart from the people who stay at the hotel, all the people who still live there.
Exactly. So they're setting up cafes and all the rest of it, and talking about the great connectivity they now have to get there by air, by train, or by road. You kind of think it's probably not that much of a yeah. So
low scores. So Neil, believability. You are the champion. You are the wind beneath my wings. Go.
So, yes, it was abandoned, and that's quite interesting. You dig into the details, and and it doesn't really add up. So, I could believe a bunch of these different things. The fact that there was like a tax collector who was a real knob. I could overtax people and sort of, or was trying to sort of getting something else. I could believe even the idea that people might have thought that the place was haunted or all the rest of it, but none of this really bears up. And actually, when you look into it more, the fact is it doesn't really seem like it's been abandoned overnight at all. So actually, it all just feels like a bit of a tall tale to make the place sound more interesting, or just people have kind of like, oh yeah, that place down the road that it's finally become abandoned, that was abandoned overnight, 200 years ago. Well, no, actually it wasn't. Census shows clearly.
What are you talking about? I lived there a week ago.
Especially the whole thing about they disappeared the night before. Again, it's a bit of a Mary Celeste thing where you just layer on a load of fictional detail that makes it sound more interesting than the actual facts. So no, all of that goes against the believability for me. This is going to merit I'm going to give it a 3. Because it's clearly true. I mean, it has been abandoned, but all of the sort of spooky parts have basically just been made up.
Yeah.
Not spooky, the 11 parts have been made up.
I pretty much agree. The thing is, I think for us living in England or the UK, probably because it's quite small, and also because land's very expensive, and we've been pretty much everything's been doled out land-wise since the Norman conquests. We don't see a lot of abandoned towns or really understand that. Whereas in the rest of the world, like in America, you constantly get, because they've got so much space, they've got so much land there, and because, often towns would kind of develop for mining a natural resource or gold or, like the automobile industry, or they'd have like towns that would come up because they'd have like one big factory there and the kind of town grew around it. And then technology moves on or whatever, business moves on, and then the town just gets abandoned. So they have loads of that. I mean, I've sort of joked about Detroit, but I mean, there's like tens of thousands of houses that are just abandoned, whole neighbourhoods in Detroit, because there isn't the jobs there anymore. And it seems like they're turning it around a bit now through basically local action. But I mean, there are just still like loads of, and you get with all the foreclosures and stuff that happens.
Well, I think that's the problem as well. It's less that people are, whether people are abandoning it by choice, but I think it's more the banks are foreclosing.
But all people do, if it was a mining community, coal mining or whatever, then, and the mine closed or the seam was run, then people would just abandon it. But we don't, we don't really have that in where we come from, so it seems really weird, but I think that it isn't that weird really globally, probably. I'm not really sure where I was going with that really. So I think it's weird for us, but I don't think it's that weird overall, something being abandoned. So believability is fine. All the ghost stuff I think is nonsense, and I think they're tagging that on now to try and get a bit of money into the area, which is fine, but it's still not very believable. So I'm going to go 2 there, I'm afraid. I sort of completely lost where I was going there. I kind of, my brain disassociated with my body and my mouth. I just, it's the curse.
It's the curse taking effect. You mock it at your peril. Yeah, no, I think where you're going with is just basically, although we do have economic shifts and kind of like people moving, like, you get people moving to the south where there's a bit more money and stuff.
Towns.
You don't, not the rate of abandonment of places that you get elsewhere. There are some ghosts.
Yeah, but it's a rare thing, which we...
Not a big phenomenon.
Yeah, so we find it spooky because it's rare, whereas it's not actually that rare on a global scale. So, reach. I've heard ish of this thing before. It's had a couple of movies. Well, one based in it, not about it. One about it. But again, I feel like it's being pushed now because they're looking to make it into a resort. But it still hasn't got a huge reach. I imagine that people... I don't know. I don't know that people... I don't think it would be known nationally in India even, really. So
no, it's probably more of a regional
because of
thing,
that,
I suspect.
reach for me, I'm giving a 3, Neil. How about you?
I'm going to go slightly higher just because, obviously they're sort of promoting it a little bit, but I don't know. And it's something where I can sort of buy into the idea that there were regional legends about the fact that it was haunted and things like this, but I suspect it was much more of a regional thing. So yeah, who knows how prevalent it is or how well known it is throughout India, but can't really say. But it doesn't feel like it's got massive reach. Yeah, it has. It's something that's being sort of like become more known about as we've gotten through the sort of internet. But these things pick up a bit of a life of their own. So that's interesting. Yeah, so I'm going to go for a 3. I think not going to be a high score. This one, I don't think.
It's not going to be a high score, no. So finally, Neil, you first. Narrative/premise.
Well, this time, actually, I'm going to go a bit higher here because I think this is quite interesting. I think I find the whole notion of ghost towns quite evocative. I think it's as you were saying about it's not something
of your childhood.
Yes, because I grew up in a haunted village in Kettering. Wicksteed Park, regularly haunted by teenagers. We got nowhere else to go.
Chase
for an evening.
We got Wiki.
The whole notion of ghosts, as I say, I find quite evocative. It's quite interesting because it's not something that I'd be that familiar with, or it's not something you'd see massively in English. It's sort of like abandoned hamlets and things like this. But the idea of kind of like a place where sort of 1,500 people living 200 years ago, just seemingly haven't been abandoned overnight, and especially all this sort of fascinating architecture and stuff. It's quite interesting, quite evocative. And I think, the whole, it's obviously lent itself to the whole story of the tax collector and things like that, which obviously, you can debunk, but it's still quite an interesting premise, I think. It's a bit like, as I said before, Marie Celeste on a grander scale. So it's not the most amazing of stories, but I think there's a fair bit to it, and it's quite interesting. And I think that would, it's piqued my interest. It's made me think if I was in the area, I wouldn't mind going and visiting and going and having a cheeky bite to eat and something at the cafe. So I'd probably visit if I was around the area. So it's an interesting bit of narrative there, and you can sort of, obviously things like earthquake and stuff like that in the world's drying out, it's not so good. But the general narrative they come up with of the sort of tax collection and everything was quite good. So anyway, the long and the short, going to give this a 6.
6, nice. Well, the real narrative here, Neil, is of course how much man is beholden to the whims of nature. And you can have your nice town, but if there isn't the water, or you use it all up, or the meteorological effects change, then you got to up sticks and get out.
That.
So it's but they don't promote it in this way. But I think probably a more useful story here is it's quite a good cautionary tale that over farming or whatever, or kind of over using the aquifer or whatever, and you're going to have to move. And that's something which we kind of know is going to be happening, and, is going to be happening and is happening in the world at the moment.
Lies, Chris. Rain follows the plan. Scientific fact.
So I think that, a decent story. It feels like a story that I've heard a million times before of powerful man wants someone's daughter,
Yeah.
So the story is old as time, isn't it? It's not very original. The fact that it's actually, we actually know what happens, and they're just pushing this story for tourist bucks. I don't care particularly. Good for them. I just wish, if they're saying it's haunted, then, come up, but don't just go, oh, sometimes at night there's screams and other stuff. It's like, well, what is the other stuff? Do you know what I mean? So I think they've been a bit, considering they seem to be ploughing quite a lot of public and private money into making this a resort, I think they need to get their story up to scratch. So because of that, I'm going to give it a 4, because I don't want them resting on their laurels. And if they hear this, they'll know if you want to make a success out of this, you need to get some better ghost stuff going on.
Probably hire some of the script writers that are filming their films.
Basically. Yeah, or us, we could do it.
Yeah.
So that gives it a total score of 30 out of possible 80. So a fairly low one, which is surprising considering it's a haunted village. But I think we will look at other haunted villages or abandoned villages, but I would hope that they have a little bit more mythos behind them. Yeah. I'm not asking for evidence. I'm just asking for a good yarn. Do you know what I mean? It
doesn't have to be good, as we found out with the
yeah, just anything. You make a little bit of an effort, guys. So that's it. That was our second one from India as well, wasn't it? So it's good that we're we are curating the world's urban legends. And I would just say that if your well's drying out and, the tax isn't going down, you probably won't have nightmares because your stomach will be in knots because you're in financial trouble. But, maybe put a bit of lavender on your pillow and do a bit of meditation stuff. But, maybe you have to move. I don't know. Neil?
Tough love.
Tough love. And that's it from this week's Urban Legends. We will see you next Thursday. Goodbye.
Goodbye.